Hello everybody, this is going to be a spoiler-free review of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I saw it Thursday night on opening night, and I got a lot to say about it. But like I said, no spoilers in this video. I'm going to give everybody a few days over the weekend to see it, and on Tuesday next week, I will be posting one with just all the spoilers, talking about all the details of the movie. So let's get into it. Now, first things first, I actually loved this. I thought it was really freaking good, so different. Just almost everything about it was different from everything that we've seen in the MCU up to this point, and that's part of the thing that I loved about it. I felt like the pacing for this was perfect. They hook you immediately, and everything that happens afterwards and everything in between action and emotional scenes just works so well, and I felt hooked the entire time. I'm not going to say that I'm a huge fan of the director Sam Raimi's work in the past. Like, obviously I'm a big fan of 2/3 of the original Spider-Man trilogy, and I'm not really like a huge horror movie fan, so Evil Dead wasn't exactly a big deal to me. But the change in style that he brings to the MCU is so refreshing to watch, and the horror genre actually fits super well with the Doctor Strange movie. I'm not going to say that it was like 100% a horror movie, not at all, but there's like scary movie vibes, and it works perfectly. There are a few like horror movie tropes that he adds in there, like one-liners and like cheesy stuff, but I'm willing to overlook that because the rest of the movie is just so good. Benedict Cumberbatch is obviously perfect at playing Doctor Strange at this point. They were really able to get creative with a lot of his magic, and that was really cool to see, and he just never disappoints me anymore with any of his performances. But even though he is the titular character and he has the spotlight with the most screen time, Doctor Strange is definitely not the best part of this movie. America Chavez, played by 16-year-old Xochitl Gomez, is such a fun and interesting character for them to bring in, and the way that they depict her powers is so dope. On top of all of her scenes being pretty informative and important for the movie, seeing Doctor Strange interact with a teenager is always great. Plus, America Chavez is going to be very important in the future of the MCU, so I'm looking forward to seeing her down the line. But the undeniable best part of this movie was every scene that Elizabeth Olsen was in as Scarlet Witch. She was amazing. This film was such a perfect follow-up to WandaVision, and Elizabeth Olsen was really able to give all of herself to this character and give a lot of fans what they've been wanting from the Scarlet Witch since she showed up in Age of Ultron. She's still dealing with her grief after Endgame and WandaVision, but this time we see it from a much darker place, coupled with the fact that she has much better control over her powers, which actually makes her a little bit scary to see on screen, and I love that because we're getting to see what's much closer to the full scope of her powers, and it's crazy. Not to mention the absolute stranglehold that this woman has over me. I am even more in love with her after this movie. But one thing about this that I really loved that actually surprised me when I saw it was the amount of world building that this movie does, and I can't really get into it without spoiling anything, but the scope of this movie is huge. But there's so much more in it and a bunch of spoilery stuff that I can't talk about, so just go see it, it's great. Everybody, I have waited patiently and given y'all the weekend to watch this movie, so now it's time to give my spoiler-full review of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie yet, scroll past this, give it a like, and come back later after you watched it. And now let's get into it, and let's just compound this on top of my spoiler-free review, so everything I said in there added onto this. So I always love me a good cold open to a movie, and they just drop you right in the middle of the action, and kind of like Infinity War, when they have something so drastic like happened in that movie, and in this, seeing Defender Strange, a character we thought was going to play such a big role, die in like the first minute of the movie, it really sets the stakes for it. It gives you a sense like right off the bat, this shit is going to get real fast. When Doctor Strange and America Chavez travel to Universe 838, we do finally get confirmation that the main MCU that we've been watching for over a decade now is in fact Universe 616, just like the main universe in the comics. Of course, that was spoken before in Spider-Man Far From Home by Mysterio, but it turned out that Quentin Beck was full of shit, and he probably just made that up. And speaking of Universe 838, let's get into the spoiler of spoilers, the Illuminati, and all these cameos that we see. First, I'm going to list these character appearances in order of how scarring their death was in this movie to me. Last place on that list is Maria Rambeau as Captain Marvel. She had such an epic fight with her, but her death was so anticlimactic and kind of unbefitting of how powerful a character that she was. But still, their fight was epic, like two Infinity Stone powered beings going at it full force. It was pretty crazy, but then she got crushed by a fucking statue. Next on that list was probably most people's favorite cameo in this sequence, John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards. This is just yet another example of how amazing Marvel is at listening to its fans, because John Krasinski, if you didn't know, has been fan cast as Mr. Fantastic for years now. And for Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige to actually commit to that is pretty dope. But then he gets turned into like a pile of string cheese and his head pops like a balloon. Next up was probably my favorite cameo, which was Patrick Stewart as Charles Xavier, Professor X from the X-Men, and most specifically the X-Men animated series from the 90s. And it really looked like he was going to make a big difference, but then he got psychically killed in a little psychic world by Wanda in like a scary monster witch form, and she snapped his neck, bro. Next up, Haley Atwell returned to play Peggy Carter as Captain Carter, and if you watched What If, you know what's up. And she actually held her own a little bit for a while against Wanda, but then she got cut in half by her shield. And finally was the leader of the Inhumans, Black Bolt, and his mouth disappeared and he blew up his own head, and it made me like want to cry and throw up at the same time. Now, even though they were very short-lived, these cameos actually have huge implications for the future of the MCU, but I'll get into that in a future video. But now I need a part 2. Hello everybody, welcome to part 2 of my full coverage of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. This video will have spoilers in it, so if you haven't seen the movie, drop a like and come back later. Now, after all of those gruesome deaths that I talk about in my part 1 of this review, is really where I kind of have a big problem with actually Doctor Strange and his character. Now, don't get me wrong, I loved this movie. I thought it was really good. It was very entertaining for me, so different, and it was great. But the character development for Doctor Strange was like non-existent to me. Like at the very beginning of the movie when Strange is talking to Wanda for the first time before he knows that it was her that sent all this bad stuff to start happening, she says the line that we saw in the trailer where she's like, you break the rules and become a hero, I do it and I become the enemy. That doesn't seem fair. When she says that, she's 100% right. And I'm not condoning anything that she did in this movie. Like, she is the villain. She does terrible, horrible, almost unspeakable things in this movie. And she argues that America Chavez's death, just, one person, would be worth it, and that is her being reasonable. And Steven argues that that's the logic that their enemies use, and Wanda snaps right back at him with, well, it was okay when you gave Thanos the Time Stone and let all those people die. And that's not just considering the people that got snapped away, because yes, they did get snapped back, but think about the Asgardians or the Sorcerers or the Wakandans in that final battle in Endgame that probably died. Like, I don't agree with what Wanda was doing, but why is it okay for Steven to make that decision and sacrifice all those people? But that's Stephen Strange, and his decision-making is behind us. We put that in the past, right? Wrong! Even after all that, even after all the lecturing about her violating the natural law of things and everything that she did, Stephen Strange still goes right back and dreamwalks using the Darkhold. And arguably, where's he dreamwalks into a corpse, which even those demons were like, this is forbidden. Like, when demons are saying you're wrong, bro, you're probably wrong. Did he have any better options at hand? I don't think so. But I'm just saying that it would have been nice to see them write him away out of this situation without breaking all of his own rules so much, especially after lecturing somebody else to do the same. But that's probably my only big gripe with this movie. Now on to some more good stuff. The music fight that Our Strange had with Sinister Strange was ingenious. It was like chef's kiss. Having them weaponize the music physically with their magic, but then whenever they throw it, you can also hear that music playing out loud, and it gets louder when it gets closer and explodes. It was beautiful. One of my favorite parts of the whole movie. I think Elizabeth Olsen played her role to perfection, and her arc was so well done. Having her watch her sons from a different universe see her as a monster and a witch instead of their mom, and having her have the realization that what she's doing needs to stop was just perfect. Also, there's no way she's dead, right? I'm not the only one that thinks that.